In the pillow video, I talked about two important foundational rules in plush making, the thickness rule and the match your line rule. But a pillow are straight lines, and curves follow the same rules, but they just don't behave the same way. Let's talk about that today, and I'll show you what I mean. Today, we're drafting a seahorse, which is a perfect example for this because it is a slim shape that is all curves. It's perfect. If you want to follow along, in the description below, I have my silhouette and my finished pattern, so you can do this with me. If you haven't seen the pillow video where I talk about these foundational rules, I really recommend that you watch that first. I'm not going to go into a bunch of details about those rules this time, so go watch that first and then come back and join us for this one. I'm Misty from the Plushie class, and let's do this. This is going to be fun. I'm excited. Okay, here's what happens with curves. When you add thickness to a straight line, the new edge stays parallel. They're the same length, so that's no problem. There's no change in the curve there. But when you add thickness to a curve, the outside edge gets longer and the inside edge gets shorter. So let's measure these as an example. Our original silhouette length, it's 4 inches. But then we take this length and we measure it, and all of a sudden we're talking that it is 3.5 inches. So on an inside curve like this, you're gonna lose length from your silhouette. But on an outside curve, let's measure that. So 3 3/4 was right here. Now let's measure the outside line, 4 inches. So on an outside curve like this, you're gonna gain length. This is gonna be longer, so we're gonna have to remove some length from this side, but we would need to add length to this side. Remember that the whole goal is to make our pattern edge the same length as our silhouette edge. Let's see what this actually looks like on the seahorse. Here's my seahorse, and as you can see, I've outlined my silhouette. Remember, to know thickness, you just decide how fat you want your plush to be, and based on the rules in the pillow video, I added that length around the silhouette of my seahorse. So on our seahorse, the outer line of the belly is going to grow. The inner curve of the tail is going to shrink. If we don't account for those curves, our finished plush won't match our original drawing or our silhouette. Here's how I check the length of my curves. First, I divide my silhouette into sections. Each curve gets its own section. Don't try to measure one long stretch because the longer and shorter bits cancel each other out and you won't know where to add your darts and gathers. So I already cut this out, but I have 2 silhouette copies and I lay it along my pattern edge section by section. I'm going to mark on this one too the same lines. So now all I have to do is compare my silhouette line to my pattern line. When the silhouette ends first, I need to remove length from my pattern. When the pattern ends first, I need to add length. I mark the difference right on the pattern. If you know you're going to use gathers, you only need to know the length of the silhouette because you're going to gather the fabric to that length. So who cares how much longer it is? So on this section, we'll just write gather to 4 1/4 inch. We're going to leave this section alone for a minute. It's going to need a little bit of special consideration. One thing about gathering is don't gather just a partial curve. You have to gather the whole thing or else you're going to distort the shape of your curve. Gathers work well on gentle curves like this, especially if you're using thicker fabrics like furs or minkies. Those are going to hide the gathers quite nicely. The amount that you gathered should equal the length of the silhouette in that section. That's the match the line rule. We're making the pattern edge equal the same length as the silhouette edge. This time we're just using gathers to do it. Now that we've written on our pattern how much each section needs to be gathered, we can focus on the sections that need to be lengthened. Remember, if a curve on your pattern is shorter than the matching section on your silhouette, you need to add length to that line until it equals the original silhouette measurement. Also, one thing I want to mention is that I ended up changing my gather amount to 5 3/4 because I realized I did it through this curve. I ended this curve early, which would distort it. Remember, we talked about that? And so I lengthened this one where I'm going to gather all the way down to here. So this 5 3/4 is that whole length of my original silhouette, and we're going to gather that amount. And I measured each of these sections and I added what I was going to add. So in this section, we need to add 1/8. Up here, it was supposed to be added, we're supposed to add 1/16. I'm not even going to worry about that. I guess we could. Let's do it. We might as well. Down here, it got cut off. We're supposed to add 1/8 of an inch. This is a pretty straight line, so it's not really surprising that we only need to add 1/8 of an inch to that section. But then down here on the tail, remember, we're going to gather this side, but underneath each section, we're going to add 3/8 of an inch here. It's a small enough section that I think we should probably do it over a couple of slashes. Let's do it over 3 slashes, and then each slash can have 1/8 of an inch added to it. Right here, we're going to add 1/8 of an inch. Right here, it is 3/16. That's hard to read. But in these two sections, it was both 1/8. So let's do that. Okay, so this is how we're going to go about doing this. You need another piece of freezer paper and an iron and some scissors. Okay, that's it. Okay, so we're over here at my ironing board. So in the middle of each section where we want our slashes to go, let's start with the tail because it's lots of little pieces. So we're just going to go and we're going to cut this all the way through, except for we're going to leave a tiny hinge on there. See that tiny hinge? Just enough to keep our pattern together. And then we're going to measure. We were supposed to add 1/8 of an inch. So 1/8, and we're going to iron it. I like to iron one side first, actually, and then you can more accurately iron your other half. Okay, let's do another one. Look how satisfying this is. Peel this up. Woo. The next one is 3/16, which is just a tiny bit above 1/8. So iron that down. Okay, now we need to add 3/8 to this section. So I'm going to do that over 3 slashes. Oh, I cut that one all the way through. Okay, so this is where we're at. We added 1/8 of an inch here, a 1/16 of an inch there. This little nose, we have this start right here, but we actually needed to remove 1/16. So I think it makes sense, 3/16, to just add another tiny dart right here. And then it'll kind of thicken our nose a little bit. But okay, let's go talk about this chin. So under the chin, I want you guys to learn this method because you're going to have to use it a lot, and it's important for more than just this seahorse. Anytime you have a point where there's a sharp inward curve in your pattern, this is how you're going to take care of it. This is the method. So I'm going to show you on the seahorse, but recognize that you can do this on any pattern that has this problem. All right, we can't add the thickness that we need because there's just no room right here to even add it. Plus, if we left it the way that it was and you sewed that down, our chin would be super tucked in and it wouldn't be like our silhouette. So we need to add fabric there so that it can open it up and have the right shape of chin. So this is what we have to do. First, we need to figure out how much length each side actually needs. And you can see here what I've already done. I continued my thickening line all the way in. So as I continued to measure, this is the point where they intersect, but I continued to measure with 1 inch thickness. So on this pattern, it's going to need 1/4 of an inch on this inside. And I just continued that to the end of the line. So it keeps going with its curve up and like this. And you stop it when you reach that 90-degree corner. And then I did the same thing on this side. So you just follow your line all the way down until you reach your 90-degree angle of this original line. Okay, so there's our 90 degrees right there, like that. So what we want to do is we would just slash this in right here, but it's just a little bit tricky because you have to know where those lines would naturally meet. Okay, to help you visualize this, I cut out 2 pieces with their thickening line still attached, okay? So if you can see here, I left our thickening line on here, but this is where our hinge would be if I were to have cut it. You can't do this without making 2 separate pieces because you naturally cut through this line. So if we were to take these and you're still going to hinge, but you hinge, and when we open it, we're going to open both sides with that natural line there that we created until they just barely touching. And that is how much we need to open up our neckline or our chin line to create this same shape. Okay, so on our original pattern, we still need to slash all the way in. It's a little fiddly, but this is the best way I have found to do it. Okay, so then we're going to open it to here so that it stays, or so we open it the right amount, and these 2 points are touching. Hold it down, and then iron this together. So that's how much we need to open. That was hot. This is how much we need to open for our chin. And then you get to satisfyingly peel it up. Oh, I really ironed that one down. Okay. Whew. Okay, so we're going to clean it up and we'll add that tiny dart, and that's our pattern. We did it. Okay, so under that chin is definitely a little fiddly and a little awkward, but I hope you understand the concept of how you know how much to actually open that chin, and it will give you really good results if you do it. Last thing is this tiny little dart. We just have to remove 3/16, which is not a big dart. Here is the pattern as it currently sits. What we're going to do now is try it out and make sure that we did it accurately and that it matches our original silhouette as best as we can. Now, this doesn't mean that we're completely done, especially in a more complex pattern. one rendition might not be enough. We might have to still go back and try and fix some things, but this method definitely gives us a framework of how we make our decisions rather than wasting a ton of fabric trying and sewing and trying and sewing and moving darts because we didn't like how it looked, but without really having any framework of why we moved the dart where we did. Let's talk about putting this little guy together. The first thing that you have to remember is this pattern that we've just created does not include your seam allowances. This is finished size, so make sure you add 1/4 of an inch all the way around when you are cutting this out so that you have a seam allowance. Here's a super easy way to get the gathers accurate without having to do a lot of measuring, which can be super annoying on bunched fabric. So we're going to tie a knot in our gathered thread and mark it from the knot how long the silhouette section is. Once your gathers reach the mark, you've got it. Wrap the thread around a pin to hold it in place. We're going to do that for each gathered section. Try to gather each section evenly between both layers of fabric. It makes it so it stuffs better and it makes a smoother sew line. Okay, I got this sewn. It's looking good. I've got my bunching up here, my gathers up here, these tiny little dots, gathers right here, and look at this little tail. So remember to clip your seams. That's going to make a big difference, especially down here on the tail. And then let's turn it around after I clip all of my seams and see how we did. Clip, clip, clip your seams gently down the row. Merrily, 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 merrily. That's the way to go. Okay, you are definitely going to need some hemostats to turn this tail around. You know, gathers are really perfect for seahorses too because they have like all that ribbing down their bellies. It's really like the perfect animal for this method. Okay, I got my hair out of my face. Okay, look at this little guy. He's cute. I got him all stuffed. Let's compare him to our silhouette. Here we go. Here's our original silhouette. And here is our finished plush. So how did we do? I mean, I think that's pretty dang close. It's not perfect. That's one thing that you'll notice with gathering. They're a little bit tricky. I have probably more gathering here than up here, which caused the shape of the curve to go a little wonky. And then if you'll see the curve of the gathers on the tail has made it kind of, it's not straight. But that's kind of what gathers do. They're kind of tricky. I try to make them as even as possible, but it's kind of hard. Anyway, so there we go. I think that was pretty dang close. That's awesome. That's always so satisfying when you do it. We took a lot of time on the paper pattern, but we only had to sew it one time. This is a pretty simple example of these rules that we need to follow, but it's all based on the same thing. So it turned out great. And I really wouldn't change anything. Sewing wise, the darts were a little bit tricky because they're so small. You could do a few things for that. One, not add the darts. The nose is pretty small for those. One, I think I was a little sloppy about it. One thing I could do for that is sew it better. The other thing is that we could have indicated on our silhouette that we said 1/4 of an inch, but we could have said 0. And then if we said 0, it would have just gone down to its original silhouette shape. You don't adding 1/4 of a thickness to 0 is still 0. So that would have simplified that shape as well. That's just a consideration. The neck turned out perfect. Look at our angle of our neck versus the pattern shape. So that's pretty cool. I always just think when we finish how cool it really is. It just always surprises me that our pattern paper ends up looking so weird, and I even will like have to stop myself from cutting it a little bit more evenly or changing it a little less or doing something to make the paper look better. But you have to stop yourself from doing that because all of those changes were purposeful. We made those decisions based on the rules and we followed them. And when we sew it together, it always ends up looking like our silhouette. And that is so cool. Okay, so now on its own, this seahorse is pretty plain. And that's on purpose at this point. This was just a sample. This was just a prototype. And when you have 2-piece stuffed animals, they're going to be more simple. But like adding fun fabric, embellishments, maybe adding some embroidery, adding your eyes onto it are all going to make it a lot more fun and a finished plush that is so cute. Once the pattern's complete, you get to make it your own, and that's where the fun part comes in. So I hope you enjoyed this. We just have to remember the thickness rule and the match the line rules. They're both just really important in making your plush. But if you don't want to add gathers and you don't want to do darts, then the next step would be to add a gusset. And we'll talk about that next time. So make sure you subscribe. If you want to give this a try, see if you come out with the same thing I did, then go ahead and go to the link down below, download this little guy, and give it a try for yourself. I'll see you in the next one.